36 were found dead at a volcano in Japan.
And 2 community colleges received grants from the Obama administration. Hi, I'm Caleb Scanlon.
And I'm Jenny Tichkowski, and this is your Public Eye News. NMU began their 9th annual United Conferences this week. This conference teaches and informs the community about diversity. There was a panel discussion this morning encouraging women to take on leadership roles. This discussion was led based off of Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In. This book encourages women to empower themselves in and out of the workplace. The conference ends this Wednesday, October 1st. Home invasion charges have led to a jury trial for River Grove resident Stephen Thomas Hellwig. Hellwig, along with 3 others, were accused back in July of breaking into a home and holding the owner at gunpoint. Medical marijuana, guitars, and a gun were taken from the home. The 3 others have already pled guilty. Hellwig, who pled not guilty, will return to court on February 3rd.
In Michigan, 2 community colleges are receiving close to $5 million from the Obama administration. Alpena Community College and Wayne County Community College will each be presented with nearly $2.5 million from partnering with employers on job training. Throughout the country, nearly 270 community colleges have received this grant, and $450 million have been distributed so far. The Obama administration says that their strategy is to link job training to industry demand in order to improve wages and reduce unemployment. An 83-year-old man from Wright Township has been charged in a wrong-way crash on I-96 about 15 miles north of Grand Rapids. According to Ottawa County Sheriff's Department, Leslie Lehman faces 2 counts of driving on a suspended license, causing the death of his wife and another woman. The crash occurred after Lehman drove the wrong way on the freeway earlier this month. Lehman was hospitalized after the crash and will be prosecuted at a future date due to his health.
A judge refuses to stop Detroit water shutoffs because of bankruptcy. If people aren't able to pay their bills, their water will be shut off. Judge Stephen Rhodes released this statement Monday after listening to testimonies last week. 30,000 customers are currently involved in a 2-year payment plan, but this plan still doesn't help the poorest customers. The department can only do so much to help customers while not going bankrupt themselves. Michelle Obama and Chris Christie are campaigning in Wisconsin. Both are in Wisconsin to campaign in a close governor's race. Obama was in Milwaukee this afternoon campaigning for Democratic candidate Mary Burke, while Christie was in Hudson campaigning for Governor Scott Walker. Walker and Burke are currently tied among registered voters. And after the break, we'll have your national and international news.
On the next Makers.
We have a little lady who tells jokes. Come on.
Women take on a man's world.
It wasn't like there was a slew of female comedians that I could connect to.
And kill.
She came out there hilarious. People were applauding and they were winning awards. You're out there and you've got to be in charge. I'm a lion tamer. Snap, snap, snap. You know, I'm in charge.
Makers, Women in Comedy.
Join us Tuesday evening at 9.
In Hong Kong, police are defending their use of tear gas and other questionable tactics to control the protests that have stunned the city's financial district. Police said for the sake of safety and stability that the thousands of pro-democracy protesters should stop all acts of civil disobedience. The protesting began after Beijing decided last month that candidates in Hong Kong's first election for its top leader would be handpicked by a committee that shows vast support for the Chinese government. These protesters are searching for a greater democracy for their country. While there's a lot of support for the protesters throughout China, many are concerned about the unrest that the country currently faces. Air travelers still face delays this morning going in and out of Chicago. An air traffic control center outside the city is out of commission because of an act of sabotage. Jeff Peggs is at O'Hare International Airport, where more than 400 flights this morning alone were canceled.
4 days after a fire, allegedly set by contract worker Brian Howard, destroyed the communications center at this critical air traffic control facility outside Chicago, commercial aviation is still trying to regain its footing. In a statement Sunday, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association called the last several days one of the most challenging situations they've faced since 9/11. At Chicago's O'Hare Airport, 550 flights were canceled Sunday, 700 flights nationwide. The FAA says the arrivals and departures were at only 60% of a typical day out of O'Hare, 75% at Midway. In order to keep flights moving, air traffic control centers in Cleveland, Indianapolis, Kansas City, and Minneapolis have taken over the Chicago Center's responsibilities. It's the FAA's approach to keeping the system working. Ken Button is with George Mason University. Is this the best backup plan that they can come up with?
I think the rarity of these incidents suggests that if you had a duplicate system everywhere, the cost would be astronomical and just unacceptable.
Additional air traffic controllers have been brought in to monitor and direct arrivals and departures out of Chicago and neighboring airports. The cost is adding up for the airlines, even though some of the major carriers say the beginning of the work week should bring fewer delays and cancellations. Still, the incident is raising questions for the FAA.
I think the question of allowing one man in and being able to do this damage is really a thing that has to be investigated very closely afterwards.
5 more bodies were found at a volcano in Japan, bringing the total to 36. Toxic gases and ash from the volcano permitted rescue workers from recovering some of the victims. They have rescued 12 so far, which still leaves 24 bodies near the summit. Mount Intaki is a popular hiking destination that erupted last Saturday. 250 people were going for a hike at that time. The U.S. carried out more airstrikes on ISIS targets in Syria Monday morning as America tries to weaken the Sunni militant group. President Obama talked with 60 Minutes about the situation in Syria and Iraq and admitted that mistakes have been made. Craig Boswell has more from the White House.
U.S.-led coalition forces targeted ISIS-controlled areas inside Syria Monday. President Obama said on 60 Minutes the U.S. didn't immediately see the Sunni militant group was gathering strength.
Our head of the intelligence community, Jim Clapper, has acknowledged that I think they underestimated what had been taking place in Syria.
President Obama told Steve Croft ISIS became stronger during Syria's 2-year civil war. The president says this is not America against ISIS, that the U.S. is leading the international community to try to stop the terrorists from taking more innocent lives.
There is a cancer that has grown for too long that suggests that it is acceptable to kill innocent people.
The president is taking heat from both sides of the aisle. Democrats are generally resistant to getting into another conflict, while Republicans say the president didn't act fast enough. Congressman Paul Ryan told CBS this morning President Obama ignored his own advisors who wanted to arm Syrian rebels when the civil war in that country first began.
Those of us who were getting the same intelligence briefings in those days agreed with Petraeus, agreed with Clinton, and didn't agree with President Obama.
While the president has stopped short of committing boots on the ground, Republican leaders say ground troops may be necessary to stop ISIS. Craig Boswell, CBS News, the White House.
In the eastern Paktia province of Afghanistan, 4 police officers and 2 civilians were killed after a car bomb explosion. 7 Taliban militants were also killed in a gun battle near a government compound. The acts of violence were stemmed from the swearing-in of the new president of Afghanistan. After 6 months of deadlock over electoral fraud and a recount of votes, Ashraf Ghani has finally been sworn in as Afghanistan's new president. Ghani will serve as president in the country's first democratic transfer of power since the 2001 U.S.-led invasion overthrew the Taliban. The jury selection has begun in the trial of a friend of Boston Marathon bombing suspect Johar Tsarnaev. Rebel Filipos is being accused of making false claims to the authorities who were investigating the bombing. The statements were made 3 days after the bombing, just hours after the FBI released photos of Tsarnaev and his brother as suspects in the attack. The jury selection has begun in federal court on Monday. And after the break, we'll have your weather and sports.
Next time on Frontline, Get ready to change the way you see the game.
The brain is riddled with disease.
These players come down with dementia and then Alzheimer's, and then they're gone.
Frontline investigates what the NFL knew and when they knew it.
The level of denial was just profound.
The inside story.
You can't go against the NFL. They'll squash you.
Tuesday evening at 10 on Public TV 13.
Hello, welcome back to your Public Eye News. I'm Samantha Cretans here with your weather. If you look behind me at the NMU Academic Mall, you'll see it's a very dreary day outside. A little bit of mist, not quite raining yet, but you're going to need a jacket if you go outside. Looking at the current conditions, it's cloudy and a little windy outside with a temperature of 44 degrees and winds from the north at 24 miles an hour and a barometric pressure of 30.1 inches and holding. And tonight we're going to see cloudy conditions with a low of 43 degrees and winds from the north-northeast at 15 miles an hour. And tomorrow it's going to be sunny with a high of 52 degrees and winds from the north at 17 miles an hour. Looking around the UP, you'll see that it's pretty cloudy all over. Here in Sault Ste. Marie, it's 48 degrees. In Manistee, 48 as well. Escanaba, 49 degrees. Menominee, 49 degrees. In Iron Mountain, 49 degrees. Ironwood, 44. In Houghton, 41, and back here in Marquette, it's 44 degrees and cloudy. Looking ahead of the next couple of days, on Wednesday, we're going to have a high of 65, a low of 54, and partly cloudy. On Thursday, we're going to see a high of 61 degrees, a low of 49, and rain. On Friday, we'll have a high of 54, a low of 42, and some more rain. So Eric, the weather this week was really nice, but I heard we had a real heartbreaker on Saturday, didn't we?
We did indeed, Sam, and hopefully Northern can make up for it when they travel to Saginaw this weekend. The NMU football team lost a homecoming heartbreaker on Saturday amongst a crowd of 6,400 plus fans, and the final score was 34 to 31. First half action was close when NMU and Michigan Tech both capitalized off of two large touchdown passes to tie the game, but the tie was soon broken after Michigan Tech scored two unanswered touchdowns to give the Huskies a 21-7 lead. The game then went into a shootout after a clutch Northern touchdown and a special teams fumble recovery by NMU on the 11-yard line. This in turn led to another tie at 21 points apiece. Things got ugly for NMU after allowing a 31-yard run to Tech and big 39-yard field goal. After getting within 2 points, Michigan Tech's final field goal closed the game as time expired. The Wildcats returned to action on October 4th when they traveled to Saginaw Valley State for a 7 p.m. matchup. In more news regarding Tony Stewart, the three-time NASCAR champion talked with reporters Monday at his first news conference since a grand jury decided last week not to charge him with the death of 20-year-old driver Kevin Ward. Ward was struck and killed by Stewart's car during a sprint car race in upstate New York on August 9th. Stewart said he never considered retiring from racing following the tragic incident and says he has not fully engaged since the occurrence, missing 3 races and secluding himself at his Indiana home, but did indeed return to action on August 31st in Atlanta. Stewart says he never thought about ending his racing career because, quote, that would take the life out of me. Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers urged fans to relax after last week's poor offensive performance after losing to Detroit. And perhaps they will after this weekend's turnaround when they beat Chicago 38-17. Rodgers threw for 302 yards and 4 touchdowns and scored on their first 6 possessions after being held to only 223 last week in Detroit. 2 key interceptions thrown by Bears quarterback Jay Cutler helped with offensive progression by throwing 2 touchdown passes to 2 different receivers, Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson. Interestingly enough, neither team had to punt. First time that's happened in 22 years. The Packers hope to continue racking up points this weekend when they take on the Minnesota Vikings Thursday night at Lambeau Field.
Well, the Wildcats might not have won, but I'm sure happy the Tigers won. That's going to be all the time I'll have for you today. See you tomorrow here on Public Eye News. Thanks for watching.
The preceding program was produced in studios located in the Edgar L. Hardin Learning Resources Center by WNMU-TV, Northern Michigan University Public Television.